Look, I'm sorry guys, but the All Blacks aren't going to win the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Rassie Erasmus in 2019 aside, World Cup winning teams typically come into the tournament as the previous recipients of massive winning streaks that end in the short term prior to the tournament. Although the All Blacks recently went 11 matches in a row unbeaten, it's a similar situation as Foster's win streak from 2020 to 21, with this period presiding over a time span without the All Blacks being genuinely challenged by a proper opposition. Because of the aforementioned factors, this recent streak to learn the art of winning will have certainly forced the All Blacks to show their hand early ahead of the Rugby World Cup. There's far more to elite sport than simply picking your favourite players, despite what John Kirwan and the mainstream media would have you believe. Blindly assuming that the All Blacks aren't being researched by their opposition is a behaviour I'm looking to coach out of the public with videos like this one. Well, I've seen a bit of evidence that Ireland might be holding a few things back for the World Cup, as well as some very obvious evidence that France have plenty of pre-planned tricks up their sleeves. I've simply seen no evidence that the All Blacks have done the research or rehearsed the tactics that will be required to take both of these teams down. But anyway, speaking of evidence, in today's video we'll go through the available material we have to showcase how the All Blacks are shaping up for the tournament. My name's Max, I'm the host over here at the Black Jersey, so strap yourselves in, get the popcorn, subscribe to this channel, and let's get into this. Since Joe Schmidt took over from Brad Moore as the All Blacks attack coach, the All Blacks have scored 63 tries in Test rugby. Schmidt has done a great job at getting the All Blacks up to date regarding their attack structure. However, amongst those tries, 34 of them were a total fluke. By a fluke, I mean tries caused by either a short-range effort, such as Summarising against Scotland, tries courtesy of the raw talent in the All Blacks squad, such as Cam Roigard against South Africa, or of course, an opposition error such as this horror misread by the Welsh defence on Aaron Smith last year. 6 of these 63 tries have been scored via a driving maul, while 22 of the 63 tries they've scored under Schmidt have been through a pre-rehearsed game plan. Because the All Blacks have done some improving since 2022, we'll simply put the microscope onto the 20 tries they've scored so far in 2023. 8 of these 20 tries in 2023 appear to have come from a pre-planned structure. I've got a little worried with the fact that this loop over here though has been used in some form during 5 of these 8 tries. To basically sum the innovation up, a diamond-shaped pod of forwards stand off towards the outside of a breakdown, but the clearance options don't stick to the carrier as tightly as coaches normally expect. The reason for the ruck clearance options not sticking as tightly as this animation shows is so that the carrier has the choice to turn around to pass behind themselves should the player behind the pod call for the ball. In this instance against Australia in Melbourne, Summersoni Taukei'aho, who's a member of the All Blacks spine, is the ball carrier, while the players behind him are Luke Jacobson and Dalton Papali'i. Taukei'aho opts not to take the ball into contact, as he's agreed with Richie Mo'unga to enable the usage of some space on the open side. Therefore, he passes to Mo'unga, who is protected by these 3 pod members, able to make a pass out to Will Jordan under less pressure. Another example of this loop pass is used to put Jordan over in the corner in Melbourne earlier in the test. This version of the loop is made by Scott Barrett and Shannon Frizzell, wrapping around from the open side to the blind side of this ruck near the try line, which allows for Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane to travel out wider at an advantage over Mariko Koroibete, who has only just got up from the previous ruck. The use of this pod with the midfield partnership outside them allows for Mo'unga and Beauden Barrett to then travel around in behind. The axis with the hands down the line of Scott, Beauden and Mo'unga, with Frizzell, Geordie and Ioane in front, means that both Beauden and Mo'unga could take a pass from 4 possible options. Aaron Smith selects Geordie Barrett as the distributor, which puts Mo'unga, Beauden and Jordan in a 3-on-2 to get Jordan to cross the try line and score. This is a smart tactic. It is incredibly useful, but the issue is it's not 100% affiliated with the All Blacks. We can see this same pattern executed by different methods from the Black Ferns against the England's women's side in the World Cup final, as well as Ireland against England, and since we're speaking of Ireland, I have a feeling that they're the kind of team who will be able to work out how to defend this. And this here is quite an interesting prospect, because Ireland and the All Blacks could be rematching against each other in the World Cup quarterfinals, much like how they did in 2019. Having already been taken for a trial run by Lorenzo Pani in a recent warm-up test, Ireland's got incredibly close to stopping him from scoring a try for Italy. We can clearly see Italy using the same loop pattern in the 51st minute with Brex's pass to Garbisi. The pass is responsible for creating a 2-on-1 between Jack Crowley, who was defending against both Tommaso Allen and of course Lorenzo Pani himself. If not for Jacob Stockdale's atrocious tackle technique, which saw him drop from the team ahead of the World Cup, Ireland would have cracked the code on how to defend against this loop pattern. In order to crack said code as well, Andy Farrell, who is the Irish head coach, has dropped the strategy of a rush defence altogether from the team. Despite being the person who invented this tactic, Farrell knows it's out of date. The South African system that I've covered many a time is completely different to a traditional rush defence, hence why I've coined the term press defence to describe the South African system we can see on screen. As I explained in extensive detail after Ireland won the Six Nations, they've now shifted into a cover defence strategy that sees them want the opposition to run it straight when Ireland are on the back foot. This formation that we can see against Italy during the Six Nations will capitalise massively off the All Blacks' obsession with run it straight. It's also going to give the back line, however, the opportunity to turn around and cover overlaps. Anyway, back to the recent Italy fixture. Although Italy lose the ball over here and the final whistle gets blown, we can see a blatant stance to perform a cover defence from Ireland, who wish to use it to close out the game. On 81.05 we can see a defensive pattern that's close to man marking, but on 81.06 we can see Calvin Nash and Keith Earls blatantly step in front of Stuart McCloskey. That is so if Nacho Brex receives the ball, Earls can stand in the way and let Brex run straight at him. By allowing Brex to run it straight at him, Earls pulls Brex further away from the back so we're closer to the breakdown, allowing McCloskey to come in and make a tackle before getting back to his feet to win a turnover on the red cross, as this animation shows us. We'll now rewind back to the start of the animation to show that if Brex chooses to exploit the outside, McCloskey now has the opportunity to turn and chase Brex with a head start. If we pretend that Brex is receiving the ball from a three-man pod, McCloskey gets to read this play well in advance, isolate Brex, and also win a turnover again in a completely different defensive scenario for himself. Now look guys, I could go on for hours about the Irish cover defense, but I'll link you to this video here so that you can see how the system works in full. The reason we'll move on from this topic is because I want to now discuss the nature of the All Blacks lineout and why it could potentially be absolutely ripped to pieces by France in the pool stage. When the All Blacks named their Rugby World Cup squad for this year, there were only 3 decisions that I disagreed with from Ian Foster. The first was, of course, to select Luke Jacobson over Hoskins Sotutu at number 8. The second was to select Finlay Christie over Brad Weber at number 9. And of course, the final one, which is getting really conscientious right now, is the fact that Leicester Fainga'a-Anuku and Moni Narawa, both of those two got in rather than just one of them. Hence the All Blacks' inability to take a 5th lock to the Rugby World Cup. Brodie Retallick is looking like he's going to be unavailable to play during the first pull stage match against France. Shannon Frizzell, who's the first choice blindside flanker, is also looking unlikely to play in this match. Henceforth, the only real option for the All Blacks is the potential to start Scott Barrett at 6 with Tupou Vaa'i in a starting jersey, with Luke Jacobson and Dalton Papali'i both coming off the bench, or with Jacobson at 6 and Vaa'i off the bench, leaving the All Blacks without a 3rd specialist jumper, because I think that everybody with eyes to see know that Sam Cane is the captain and Ardie Savia is the MVP are the first 2 names on Ian Foster's team sheet. Both of those 2 players, however, are shorter than me, and Jacobson is the same height as me, so there's no real proper 3rd option. There's no 3rd lock wearing the 6th jersey to balance the lineout. And as we can see, these selection issues led to a lineout success ratio of 67% against the Springboks at Twickenham. So should the All Blacks proceed to start Jacobson at 6, he'll either get dominated in the air by France, or he'll need to be lifted by both locks to be a proper competitor. As this graph now shows us, France will absolutely have the height numbers to defeat the All Blacks in the air when taking their own lineout throws, but even scarier is what Sekou Makalu could do off the bench when the All Blacks have possession of the line-out ball. Although Makalu isn't the tallest of these jumpers, he's without question the deadliest. Here against Fiji in the 58th minute, we can see Sam Matavesi look to throw in the line-out while Makalu is located in the back of the French formation. France managed to correctly contest with Florian Verhaeghe in the air, which allows for Makalu to weigh up the actions of Frank Lamani, who is the Fijian halfback. We can now see through the white arrow that Makalu is clearly looking towards Lamani to see what he'll do. As we cut to a new camera angle, we can indeed see this line of vision, while Matavesi is also approaching the fake maul by running towards it. The fact that Lamani is over here with the rest of the backline here, this means Matavesi is unlikely to run blindside, hence Lamani only has a single direction to pass the ball should he receive it. Lamani indeed takes the ball, so while this try for France isn't pre-planned, Makalu, who we can clearly see from these depth charts, has played test minutes both in midfield and on the wing, has clearly been given permission to seagull at the back of lineouts around the halfway line to search for intercepts, and should Luke Jacobson start at 6, reading the All Blacks lineout is going to be much easier for Makalu to do, because if Jacobson, Savia or Kane are lifted in the lineout, he knows exactly who is going to be lifting them, whereas the genuine jumpers who anybody can lift are always going to be in the exact same places in the lineout, and this is going to really increase the amount of intercepts chances that Makalu could get off the bench. As many of us know, my recent analysis video on how the Springboks won at Twickenham shows them winning in the lineout thanks to the All Blacks penalty count including cards stretching out to 17. While they hadn't received a card of either colour in 2023 until this test match, such discipline would also open the door for France to capitalise off these via Ramos, who was the leading point scorer in this year's Six Nations. And now guys, as we can see with the graphic that is next to me, Ramos has an incredible point scoring record. His penalty goal kick ratio since he became the first choice fullback after a return from injury at the end of 2022 has been 89% for a total of 96 points in the last 12 months. He's also proven he can slot a drop goal, having done that before against Ireland, and his conversion kick ratio since becoming the first choice fullback is at 80% right now. He's a decent try scoring machine as well. He's got 3 to his name so far, and Ramos, of course, as we can see, has played the most minutes at fullback under Fabien Galtier. Having really bad discipline like how we've seen against South Africa means that France can really kick the All Blacks home and get themselves to victory. Ramos has kicked more penalty goals than any other player in Test rugby in the last 12 months, meaning that France, though they tend to want to play expansive rugby, they've also really been relying on Ramos while they've been learning to win ugly as well. So should the All Blacks have really bad discipline, France will be able to kick them away. Ireland with Johnny Sexton shouldn't have a problem doing so either, though they'll have a much tougher time in the mauls. South Africa, if we play them in the quarters, who the heck knows who's going to win? And with all the evidence I've presented to you guys as well, I just don't know if the All Blacks have done the sufficient research on the opposition. I can't just make conclusions in these videos based on my feelings and based on blind faith. I have to go to evidence to show my credibility as an analyst, and so based on the evidence that has come across my table, having watched every single All Blacks game in the Foster era at 15% speed to look over stuff, specifically the things since Joe Schmidt took charge as the attack coach, I just simply haven't seen the evidence that we've got what it takes to take down the Irish and the French. It is okay though, guys, because as a person who tries not to be a pessimist and hope for the worst, as someone who tries not to be an optimist and hope for the best, I try to think with a level head and think realistically, and if this outcome of the All Blacks failing to make it past a quarterfinal does indeed happen, everything is going to be okay long term. As rugby fans, we tend to have a bit of need for an instant gratification right now, but thinking long term, I try to think in that sentence and frame of mind, and should we be thinking long term, it's going to be okay. 2023, if we don't win it, it will be the fire that we need to win in 2027. Everything will be alright, fellow All Blacks fans. We may not be able to get the job done this year, but with a lot of young up-and-coming players currently in the squad under Fozzie, they are going to be in their prime when it comes to 2027. Think of Summersoni Taukei'aho and Rieko Ioane and Will Jordan. All of them will be in their late 20s and early 30s, the prime years of a rugby player. So even though we're not going to win this year in 2023, do not be dismayed. This is just the evidence I've seen, and should this happen, things will be all good in the long term, and we will be celebrating once again in the very near future. Thank you very much to my patrons for your support for this video. It took me a wee while to make this. Since you guys are subscribing to me on Patreon, you're also going to get my early full thoughts, full predictions for who's going to make it into the playoff stage of the World Cup and who is going to win the World Cup as well. The final video I'm going to be releasing before the World Cup is going to be my prediction on who is going to win it. So make sure to support me over on Instagram and over on Threads. Over there, I'm going to be able to notify you on where the video is out. And of course, my patrons, you'll get early access to it. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to me, and comment your thoughts down below on who you think is going to win the World Cup. Aside from France and the All Blacks, who are absolutely guaranteed to get out of their pool, I don't think anybody is safe, so it's going to be one heck of a tournament. Thank you so much for viewing this video, guys. My name's Max, I'm the host here at the Black Jersey, and I will see you later. Cheers.